Ready? Okay. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على أفضل الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد عليه أفضل الصلاة وأتم التسليم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Today inshallah we will continue the talk for conflict resolution and building connections. So Sheikh Hussein is not able to be here today, so I'm covering for him. In the previous talks we discussed, I presented a few weeks back, I covered types of people, confrontational versus constructive. Some people can be having a natural way to be confrontive, and the other people can be constructive, and we discussed the differences between the two. And we said that when we want to resolve a conflict, the first step was to seek help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the courage to be able to address the conflict that we are experiencing with someone. And also we spoke about when we resolve a conflict, we need to repel evil with good deeds. So we don't want to repel evil with evil. So when somebody comes and does wrong things to us, we don't want to do wrong things back. We want to do the right thing and the good deeds. And also we discussed about you don't have to wait for the other person to resolve the conflict. You have the power to take the initiative and start resolving that conflict. So it's really up to us if we want to make that first step or not. So this all discussed in the past, and today, if there's a subtitle for the so it's resolving conflicts, building connections, and the subtitle will be, how could I not get angry? I mean, I'm going to be talking about when you are in conflicts, it's really easy to get angry, and the Prophet ﷺ tells us what? He tells us not to get angry. He specifically and explicitly said, do not get angry, and he repeated that to one of the Sahaba. This is a known hadith. Everybody does not know the hadith? We all know the hadith. It's a very, hadith is one of the basic values that we have as Muslims, is not to get angry. But sometimes implementing it is difficult. So let's take an example. I'm not going to take an example from someone's family life or something, but I'm just going to take an example from sports. Everybody knows soccer, football? Yeah, so football, indoor football, or indoor soccer is called futsal, right? It's very famous here. So I'm going to compare futsal to hockey. Everybody knows hockey. They play on an ice rink, right? And they play around. So if we were to take one player from the futsal team and took one player from the hockey team and swapped them. So we put the futsal player in the hockey team and we put the hockey player in the futsal team. How are they going to react? Then the referee says, start, play. The soccer or the futsal player in the hockey team, he's coming from a different background. He's thinking the ball is rounded and you kick it with your feet. And he sees everybody going after a puck, the black little circle, and they're kicking it with a stick. So he made his own interpretation of what he's supposed to do. So he started to use the stick just like everybody else. So he gets shoved left and right, pushed against the wall, his head gets slammed against the glass, and he's thinking, what am I doing wrong? I mean, why is the referee not calling this as a foul, or is not getting him a yellow card or anything? On the other team, on the futsal team, the hockey player is playing rough. He's kicking the ball and he's kicking everybody in the way. And he's being isolated. It's like, oh, you're getting a warning. You don't play like this. You don't play roughly like that. And they tell him, no, you cannot play like that. It's like, why not? This is how we play. and they don't accept how he plays. And the same thing for the soccer player. He's playing soft. Everybody's shoving him around, and nobody's passing him the puck to score. So it's like he's not a good player. So he's isolated. And then he's trying to reach out, and he said, you know, I'm trying to play. I'm a really good player. I can play this game, but nobody's acknowledging where he's coming from. Everybody's expecting him to play like a hockey player. So he's not shoving people around because he thinks it's wrong. All right? But it's normal in that environment to shove people, you know, to shove the other players around, to give him a shoulder and put him against the wall and just take the puck. But to him, it's not acceptable, so he didn't do that. So therefore, his team gets like, oh, he's not a good player, so we just not give him the puck. You just let him just be around. And he's going through internally. He's like, I'm really good. Nobody's recognizing that. He's feeling angry inside him. He feels like, I'm not being accepted. People don't understand. They don't know how good I am. Eventually, he starts to, he's like, fine. If you guys want to play rough, I'll play rough. So he starts the stick, and he just pushes the stick everywhere. And he hits everybody in the team. And then the referee calls him out, tell him you're out. It's like, what do you mean I'm out? All these people have been pushing me around. He didn't say anything. Now that I'm standing up for myself, I'm trying to play, all of a sudden I'm the bad guy. So he's getting really angry. So how could you not get angry in that situation? You know you're good at what you do. You're put in that situation that you don't even know. Nobody prepared you for it. You just assume that this is how things are done, and you try to make the best out of it. And when nobody's listening to you or seeing it your way or understanding where you're coming from, you figured out, I'll just do it their way, based on what you understood. But actually, when you did it their way, actually it turned out to be a wrong thing. So there if you do and there if you don't, at the end of the day, he was isolated also by a referee. So if we were to take that in an example in our lives, conflicts happen because people come from different perspective. You have a different experience than him. She has a different experience than her. And conflicts come because of understanding of how we understand how things need to be done. So therefore, if the futsal player in the hockey rink, he gets even the referee is not taking his side, because the referee understands that the norm and the nature of the game. He's saying, well, you need to be out. This is not how you play. And he's justifying himself. But I've been pushed. I've been shoved. They've been, really rough with me. But he's not acceptable, his behavior still. But he still doesn't understand why he's being isolated. So his anger turns into depression, and his depression turns into acceptance, and eventually he accepts himself as a useless team member. He accepts that he is a useless team member. So he just stands there. The next game around, they play, and he just stands there. He doesn't do anything. And how many times we've seen people who just not engaged. They're not engaged in the family, they're not engaged at their work, they're not engaged in their community, because their perception, they feel like they're not being accepted, or they're doing something wrong, and therefore I just qadar, right? Qadar is I stay here, I don't do anything. But internally, he is going through a lot. He's gone through a lot of, internal or inner conflicts. He doubted himself. Eventually, he came to the conclusion that I'm worthless. I'll just be worthless, and that's my qadar. I used to be really good in my old days when I was playing futsal, but for some reason now I'm worthless. There's no value for me, and therefore, he just goes along in autopilot. And that's just an example that I might be going back to through today's talk, inshallah. So what's the best way to resolve conflicts? Or any conflict? What's the best way? And I'm talking here the best. The best is really to avoid it. To be proactive in avoiding it. or be proactive in addressing it. Right before the conflict gets really rough and gets really strong, we need to take the first initiative to reach out, to say something, or to address the conflict, not the person. Another way also, it helps us to get to the resolution of the conflict in the best way, is to really be mindful of what is blocking me as an individual from resolving the conflict. Usually, almost all of the circumstances, or all of the cases, what blocks us from getting out and resolving the conflict is the emotions. Is our emotions. I'm hurt. I feel disappointed. I feel disrespected. And I talked about also in the previous sessions about the difference between pride and dignity, right? We talked about that, and you can review, or you can refer to the videos if you want to know more about that. I think the last one was about that. So emotions are part of us. They're not something that foreign. I mean, it's not like something external. It's really inside us. So it's part of us. And the emotions are mentioned in the Quran, and they're mentioned in the Sunnah. Like, for example, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Do not get angry." So the Prophet ﷺ did not tell us not to feel. He told us not to get angry. Why? Because there's so many feelings that we express it through anger. Anger is the easiest way to express any feeling. Even if you're sad, some people, when they're sad, they get angry. They express their emotion of sadness as anger. So, so we all know, so emotions does exist in us. It doesn't exist, around us. It's not like an aura or a magical thing that floats around us. It's actually inside us. If I were to ask, if I were to put a picture of some of the body organs that we have, like the lungs, everybody knows what the lungs look like. Everybody knows what the brain looks like. Everybody knows what the kidney or the liver and the gallbladder and all these little things that help us in the digestive system or in the blood system or the nervous system. And if we were to get deeper into the brain, a lot of us don't know about some of the parts of the brain. For example, there's a part in the brain that stores emotions. That part in the brain is called the amygdala. It's part of the hippocampus, and the brain stores emotions there. So we remember sometimes words, we remember incidences, and for some reason sometimes when we remember incidents, we remember how we felt in that incident. You see, that feeling was stored in that incident. That incident did not trigger the feeling inside you right now. It could very likely could trigger a different feeling with you today, but it also remembers how you felt back then. So these are the things that are stored in us. So that's part of us. That's part of our memory. So when some people are not comfortable talking about emotions. I've heard many, especially brothers. Some brothers, you can hear it more likely for brothers not to, like, I don't need to talk about emotions. Give me a problem, I'll fix it. It's very logical. But we don't talk. It's not easy. We didn't learn how to acknowledge the emotions that we have inside us. So therefore, sometimes some of us have difficulties acknowledging the emotion itself. It's like, how do you feel? I feel that we have a problem. That's not a feeling. So how do you feel? I feel that I think there's hope for a solution. That's not a feeling. So knowing the feeling is also going to help us to resolve that conflict, because that conflict has triggered something inside us, some feeling inside us. Understanding that feeling is the first step towards moving forward to resolve that conflict. Any questions so far? Is it too cold? Is okay? Okay? Because I'm seeing people like rubbing their hands and Just want to make sure. Okay. Any questions? Any comments? So therefore, yeah, where does a difference of opinion come from? Difference of opinions come from experience. See, the futsal guy and the hockey guy, they have different experiences. So both of them are the outcasts because they have different experiences. So the hockey guy in the futsal court, he understands things differently. He understands to win the game differently. I mean, the court looks pretty much the same as the ice rink, but it's just not sliding, you're just walking on it or running. So the concept is the same. So he understands how to play futsal from his angle, from his experience. And the same thing for the futsal player in the hockey rink. He understands the concept, that he understood it, he implemented it based on his understanding. So his opinion on how to play is different from all of those who've been playing that game for a while. So yeah, but how do you talk to someone who's already angry? He feels isolated, he feels useless. How are you going to talk to him? So in the middle of him being angry and screaming at the referee, is like, why did you kick me out? Everybody's been pushing me, and when I stood up for myself, and somebody from the team is like, tell him, the Prophet ﷺ told us not to get angry. It's like, how could I not get angry? This is very upsetting. How could I not get angry? And you keep pushing that, and they're shut down. They don't understand what you're saying, because from their perspective, they're very angry. They're already there. The Prophet ﷺ, when he told the Sahaba, do not get angry, they were not angry. It's very important to reflect on. If you tell someone you don't get angry, when they're in the middle of it, they might not just listen to you. They might just not even ignore the whole hadith, and you don't want that. So we need to also be wise. We need to implement this wisdom of the Prophet ﷺ in our lives so we don't get angry. But if we're already angry, there's a different way how we handle the anger if somebody's already angry. Does that make sense? So the Prophet ﷺ didn't tell us not to feel. He didn't say, do not feel. He said, do not get angry. As I mentioned earlier, because it's very important. A lot of people express their feelings through anger, and a lot of people express anger differently. Some people express anger by screaming, some by violence, and some by just shutting down, being quiet. Some people get angry that way. When they're shut down, that means they're angry. You don't know that. You're a soccer player, right? You're coming from, you don't know how the hockey players get angry. So that when they get shoved, when the futsal guy comes in the hockey rink and he gets shoved, he's thinking, they're angry at me. But actually, they're not angry. So he interprets their behavior as anger based on his experience. And his team, in the hockey rink, they say, well, you're supposed to know that. How many times have we heard that? The father telling the child, well, you're supposed to know how I feel. How is he supposed to know? He doesn't even have any experience. He's a child. Oh, you're supposed to know when I do this, this is who I am. But sometimes when the father acts the same way, he's not angry, and the child thinks he's angry, but he's not. So the child gets confused. It's like sometimes you're angry, sometimes you're not. So it's very important because we communicate emotions, whether we like it or not. Whether you know it, whether we're conscious about it or not, we do communicate this emotion through what? Through what? How do we communicate emotions? I'm sorry? Our behavior? Before that? Words before that? Facial expressions. Facial expressions are very powerful. I had the slide, but subhanAllah, I forgot my laptop, so I cannot show you some pictures. But just looking at the faces of some people, and usually it takes a fraction of a second, you can capture that face. Angry, sad, disappointed, rejected. You can see the face. I'm sorry? Well, yeah. I mean, they get the emojis for a reason, right? They only show the face. They don't show the hands. They're not animated. They're just the face, right? and it sometimes can be very powerful to express it through emoji. So therefore, emotions are there. They are inside us. If you don't feel comfortable, talking about emotions or listening to emotions, then there's something. There's something here that we need to talk about. There's something here we need to address. Those who don't feel comfortable about emotions, they need it the most. That's a rule. Some of the things I've done, every once in a while I say there's a rule. But this is one of the rules, is that those who don't feel comfortable talking about emotions, they really need it the most. They need to talk about it the most because they are blocking emotions, and that's not healthy. It's like, I don't need emotions, I can think. I just use my brain, and logic helps me just fine. I don't need to deal with the emotions. So why do you get angry then? Oh, well, I didn't get angry because people don't listen to me. There's an excuse for it. There's a justification for that. But some people don't feel comfortable talking about emotions. So what's the purpose of emotions? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created our body to store and restore these emotions, just like everything in our lives. The colors, the knowledge, the relationship, the voices, we remember all that stuff. Same thing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allowed us to give us that capability of storing emotions inside us. So what's the purpose? What's the purpose of these emotions? What's the topic of today's talk? Resolving conflicts. That's the purpose. The purpose of emotions is to resolve a conflict. Some feeling inside me went on, then there is a conflict. There's a conflict there. That's the sensory. That's what makes us collaborate, what makes us coherent, is addressing these conflicts. So how do we know if there's a conflict? Feeling it. Either intuitionally, intuition, you have the power of really, intuitively, intuitively know what the problem is, or somebody did something that caused you to feel something inside you, right? So if you were to deny that, it's like, oh no, there's no problem. It's fine. We're doing it for the sake of Allah. And how many times we've seen projects gone for the sake of Allah down the drain because they were not addressing their conflicts. And they said it's okay la, left and right, until everything was not okay la. And we've seen so many beautiful projects went down the drain because of conflicts. Everybody was denying it until things blow up. How many families we've seen broken because conflicts were not addressed? Oh, no problem, it's okay, we'll get over it. Time will heal all, right? Time doesn't heal anything. If time heals anything, then you should be cured waiting for the doctor to see him. Because time does not heal. If you're waiting outside the clinic of the doctor, and if time heals, you should be healed just waiting for the doctor without seeing him. But actually you do need to see the doctor. And the doctor heals the physical pain. Same thing with emotional pain. You should be able to heal these feelings inside you, the hurt, the conflicts. And there is no subject in school that we've ever learned subject about dealing with emotions or dealing with conflicts. But it's really the most important thing that we should learn. How do we resolve conflicts? How do we manage our emotions? But we don't learn that. We learn math, biology, chemistry, and all the other stuff. And we memorize it, really. We don't learn it, right? No, little of us, some of us learn it, but most of us memorize it in a sense so they can get an A. So therefore, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us these emotions is to resolve conflicts. So why do we need to resolve conflicts? There has to be an objective. What's the objective of us? Why do we need to resolve conflicts? So if we looked at a family together and they didn't resolve conflicts, they break apart. The children, they don't know what's going on. They get confused. Project, a Muslim project or any project, conflicts are not resolved, things fall apart, the whole project, the whole initiative, all falls apart. So why do we need to resolve conflicts? What's the objective of us to resolve conflicts. What's the purpose of us as an individual? That's why we need to resolve conflict, because we need to achieve our objective as a Muslim, our objective as an individual, as a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What's our objective? To worship Allah, right? Our objective, and the Prophet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, Surah 51, verse 56, you can look it up. And be the Khalifa on earth, right? We see that. We see that a lot, and there are many schools that are called Khalifa of this, Khalifa of that. And it's a really good objective to have. But if we don't know how to resolve conflict, how am I going to be a Khalifa on earth? If I don't know how to be able to manage my emotions, not to get angry, and stay focused to be a positive contributor to the society, to feel that I am worthy of being part of the society. Because as I said earlier, the futsal guy in the hockey team eventually felt that he's useless. He doesn't contribute. And how many of us, or people you know, or we know, that they feel that they're useless? They're not contributing anything to the society. There's a conflict that was not addressed. Eventually they just accepted and they called it fate. Well, if they addressed it, if they addressed the conflict and addressed that emotion, and they'll be a contributing member of the society, that would be fate. Wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be fate? It would be. They just did something about it. The fate depends on what we do. So another objective is to ensure justice. So if you have a conflict within yourself, how can you be just with your family, with your children, with your neighbors, with the people at work? How can you be just if you have conflicts with other people? That's going to impact your emotions. Emotions impact our what? Our behaviors, we've mentioned. And we know that Surah Abasa, I said earlier, the sister was mentioning that this facial expression, Surah Abasa, the Prophet ﷺ, when he was approached by a blind man, the Prophet ﷺ was not happy with him interrupting him, because he had some honorable people that wanted to become Muslims, or they were asking about Islam. So the Prophet just gave him a face. And he frowned in his face. The blind man didn't see it, but Allah saw it. So the first emotion that came from the Prophet ﷺ is the face. He was not happy with what the blind man did. So facial expressions is the first thing to express our emotions. So these emotions are important for our survivors, or our survival, to go through that journey to achieve and fulfill our objective as a human being. It's important for us to communicate. In order for me to be communicating with you, sorry, the front row really gets that special treatment that I point at them. So I'm not singling you out in a sense, not at all. So if I have a conflict with this brother, I might have a problem or difficulties communicating with him. So if I don't have any communication, then how am I going to be able to achieve my objective without him? How is he going to be able to achieve his objective to be justice without me? What if I had a problem with another person? What if he had a problem with the brother next to him? How am I going to be justice to him? I'm not going to be able to, because there's a conflict that is not resolved. So therefore, emotions are there. When I see him, sometimes it's really upsetting. I remember maybe the conflict that I have with him just gets me upset. So therefore, it's going to impact me or my behavior of being justice. Also, emotions are important because it helps us solve problems. If we're focused on the emotion, and if it's a bad emotion, then we go and solve the problem. For example, you have a goal in a project that you're doing, you're progressing well, and as long as you're progressing, You're feeling good about it. And when there is something, a hindering force, or something went wrong, then you get upset. So the fact that you get upset, that's the driving force inside us to help us to go find out what went wrong and go fix it. If our objective is to become a worshipper of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on this earth, and if something went wrong as we are being, implementing this objective, then that feeling inside us will be able to give us that empowerment, that power, that encouragement to go fix what blocked us from being a good worshipper of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that would help us be more proactive in resolving conflicts. Some people have conflicts with people. Some people have conflicts within themselves. Some people have conflicts, sad to say, with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Some people who are traumatized, they don't understand the qadar, they don't understand loss, they can go extreme and they have conflict with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and eventually they leave their religion. How are you going to talk to them? Don't get angry? They're beyond that. So resolving conflict is something that we all need to learn, and we need to teach our children. Emotions are very, 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 very powerful if they're not addressed correctly, if they're not managed well enough to be channeled out. Now here's what happens. See, if you walk in, any one of us, if you walk and you just ding your head against that door as you go out, you bumped your head unintentionally. What do? What's the first thing you do? There's pain here, like for example, right? What do? You rub it. Oh, that hurts. You can talk about it. Oh, there's some emotions coming. That's pain. How do you know that there's pain here? Nobody sees it. It's like, no, there's no pain. I don't see pain, brother. Your hair is fine. Your head is fine. It's like, no, it's really painful. I just hit my head there. It's like, nah. That's enough. You don't need to get acknowledgement from other people that it does hurt. And the first thing we do is we rub it, right? What if we cut our finger like cutting like tomatoes in the kitchen and just like slice it, or paper cut? What do? We kiss it, or we try to make it better, right? We pay attention to it. Can you imagine emotions that are there that are not being addressed? Since we were children, we carry on that emotion. I'm not accepted, I'm not accepted, I'm not worthy. We grow up to be useless. We grow up to be no drive, no energy, no courage. So the conflicts, even if they're old, they need to be addressed. But I don't recommend you to address it on your own. You need to get a professional to help you with that. But I'm talking about daily conflicts. You really need to, and today inshallah we will learn how to address it. Today inshallah the objective is really to start that first step, what we need to do to address the conflict. Next week, I'm here next week, right sister? Yeah, so next week on Sunday inshallah I will continue with more effective way to follow through with today's talk. So we understood the importance of why we have emotions, right? It helps us to for our survival. If there's danger and we feel scared, what do? We need to protect ourselves. We cannot deny that, right? We need to take the right measures to protect ourselves. Communication, to help us communicate about the conflict, and communication and our survival helps us to achieve that objective that we were created for: worshipping Allah, being the Khalifa on earth, and ensuring justice. And also problem solving, because the journey that we're in, the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in the hadith that we are on a journey, right? The believer is like on a journey, who stopped by a tree, benefited from the shade of that tree, right? Everybody knows the hadith. So the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ said that we are just like a man who is in a travel, on a journey, and saw a tree with shade, and he just lied down to get benefit from the shade, from the heat of the sun, and then he will continue on with his journey. So therefore, our journey, as we go through, we have difficulties with it, like any other journey. Even if you're going to Malacca or Penang, You might have difficulties going through there, traffic and so forth. So how do you manage that? You get angry at the people around you holding your traffic. It's like, oh, you're so slow. I cannot do that. So, so emotions are like signals, really, just like signals for us to see that there's something wrong. It doesn't jive with what I'm expecting. It doesn't go along with how I want that journey to go, based on my understanding, right? And that's very, very important to always keep based on my understanding, because it could be how we understood it is really what the conflict is being caused. The conflict can be caused because how we understood it. Remember the example, you see the futsal player in the hockey rink, he's having problems because he is relying on his behavior in the ice rink based on what he knows from the futsal. If he changes his perspective and he saw himself, you know what, and he thinks like, well, I'm not on the futsal court anymore, I'm in an ice rink, and I'm not kicking the ball, I'm hitting the puck with a stick. So there are some differences. So therefore, I need to be mindful of the environmental changes around me. So therefore, we know people impact us, and also environment impact us. So environment has an impact on how we feel, and these feelings come as signal. Can be a signal of danger. It's like a radar going around us. Oh, I feel like there's something wrong about this guy, that I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel safe being around this neighborhood, or being in this car, or being close to that person. I don't feel safe. I feel I'm being threatened. Sometimes signals come across as a signal of somebody's crossing their boundaries. That's a feeling that it triggers. Somebody's crossing the boundary of whatever relationship that we have, or whatever the norm within the environment, then therefore that's a signal that goes off. A signal, an emotion also is a signal of closeness and connectedness, being connected to someone. If you feel good, I mean, like, I feel really close to you. I'm really, and sometimes if he travels, I feel like, oh, I missed that. I missed that connection that I had with that brother. You know, I missed that the closeness I used to have with that brother. I don't have that anymore. So these are signals that we lost something, or that we gained something. Also, these signals they can also come as I mentioned earlier, they're like a signal of progressing as you planned, progressing as you would like it to. So that's a positive. So that happy, comfort, content, all these good feelings. So all of these are signals. So the thing about emotions, there's always changes. They change continuously, and many times, maybe in the hour, in the day, they change. Maybe they're all positive, they stay in the positive, but happy, extremely happy, content, relaxed, neutral. All these are emotions, right? And you think of them like the reeds of the wheat. You know, the wind blows and they change, and if the wind blows the other way, they change the other way, and they keep changing. Like the school of fish also. If one fish moves, and everybody moves. If they sensed anything in the environment, the whole fish. Just within the needs, the emotion signals that they're getting. You just think of it that this is what's happening really inside us. Being aware of our emotions, that they are that sensitive to the environment around us, we need to be able to. Oh, did I press it? I get a little animated sometimes. So it's really good to be aware that these emotions are very, very sensitive to the surroundings around us, and also to what we think. Sometimes our own thoughts trigger a negative feeling or a positive feeling. So we do have that power as well. So if you think of like the steps, conflict happens, first thing is triggered almost all the times is the feeling. When there's a conflict, it's like, oh, I feel upset. And then the thought comes. The thought is connected to the feeling. It's like, oh, he doesn't like me. And then he thinks about himself. Thoughts coming, oh, I'm not good enough. Thoughts are still coming. Based on what? Based on that feeling. The feeling triggers the thought. So the conflict triggers feeling, feeling triggers thought. So if the conflict triggers feeling and feeling triggers thought, we need to stop. We don't want to continue, because after the thought, what happens is that it becomes a belief. So we believe. So stop believing that this person really doesn't like me. And that becomes a belief. And that reflects. Can you imagine that person is your father? Right? Or your child is thinking about that, about you. Because of how you behaved, caused the conflict within the child. You never really helped the child to understand what happened. Then the child has a thought. Automatically. They have to have an answer, because children don't have experience like we do. So therefore they interpret like that guy, like the futsal guy in the hockey rink. He made his own interpretation. Nobody told him. He made his own interpretation how I should play that game. And when he started to use the stick and stand up for himself, the referee called him out. That didn't help the situation at all. So can you imagine the child? You have a conflict with the child, and you reprimand the child, or you really discipline the child one way or another, and the child doesn't know what he did. So he makes up his own mind. Not his own mind in the sense that he makes his own connection. He's thinking that this act means my father's going to hit me, so therefore I'm not going to do that act. But it could be something else really behind it, why he got punished, or she got punished. So therefore, we need to prevent the thoughts from happening. So therefore, we need to address the feeling. So we need to start fixing conflicts from the feeling. Because if we go to the beliefs, it's going to be tougher to fix it. And after beliefs, what happens? There'll be consequences. The consequences on me having that belief growing up in a family that I always felt that this act is wrong. And therefore, I have this belief that I'm not supposed to do that act, and therefore he's going to grow up as an adult not to talk, for example. Like, don't talk back to your father. So the child is going to grow up to say, if somebody pushes me around, I'm not going to talk back. That's what happened to the guy from the futsal team in the ice rink. He got pushed, and then I was like, okay, that's my qadar. I'm just going to sit there, don't do anything. I'm going to see wrong. I'm going to see people doing everything wrong. I'm just going to be quiet. I'm not going to say it. Why? Because he doesn't know how to say it in a positive, proactive, effective way that helps others. He just doesn't know. No one taught him how to do it. So therefore, they keep it to themselves, and they just move forward and see what is wrong, and then correct it. And we are, as Muslims, we're supposed to say what? كنتم خير أمة. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس. Why? Why we are the best people? Because the shahada? Because the salah? Because the zakah? Because of the fasting? Because of hajj? Allah didn't say that. He said we are the best of nations because of what? Who can tell me? I'm sorry? تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر. I'm sorry? I cannot hear. وتؤمنون بالله. So the first two, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر. You join good deeds and you forbid evil. You forbid evil. So anybody can do that, right? So what distinguishes us as Muslims, as believers, is we do these two, and we are believers in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because an atheist can do the same thing. An atheist can be good, join good deed and forbid bad, evil acts. But what distinguishes us from the others is that we believe in Allah as one God, as the creator of the universe, who never rested. He doesn't rest. Allah is the most powerful. He's the protector and the sustainer of the universe. Never stopped. Right? So the first two is definitely what makes us a great nation in combination with the third one. So that's what makes us a great nation. If somebody feels that they're not competent, they're not worthy, nobody's hearing them, they're just going to see what is wrong and they're just not going to do anything about it. They see what is right and they're not going to encourage it because they learned from young age, don't talk back, don't speak, don't this, don't that. So that becomes a belief. So therefore, conflict triggers feelings. Feelings trigger thoughts. Thoughts trigger beliefs. Beliefs trigger consequences. So we want to avoid these consequences at the beginning. We cannot avoid, the best, as I mentioned earlier, the best way to resolve conflicts is to avoid them. But is that realistic? To some extent, yes, but not always. So if not always, then whatever we cannot avoid, whatever we cannot proactively prevent, therefore we need to address it at the feeling. If it doesn't feel good, then let's talk about it. Any questions or comments so far? Yes, sister. I'm sorry, can you give me the microphone, please? Jazakallah khairan.
Can you clarify again about the connection of being a Khalifa and also on this issue of resolving conflict?
Yeah. So feelings are triggers. We need these feelings to help us in our journey to achieve our objective. So if our objective, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that we were created to worship Him and to be a Khalifa and to be justice. There are other things that we can talk about, but these are the main things that comprehensive of everything else. So if we have these feelings, they are really triggering something, either good, that we need to move on and continue, or bad, that we need to fix. If it's bad, we need to fix, then we have this objective in front of us, ahead of us. If it's bad and we're not addressing it, it could impact our journey going to that objective. So if I want to be a Khalifa, I need to be sincere with and acknowledge my emotions and the conflicts I have. I need to resolve these conflicts because I want to be a Khalifa at the end, right? That's my objective. That's my objective for my children. If my children don't have that capability of addressing emotions and resolving it, how are they going to be a Khalifa? They're going to get upset and they're going to slap the first person they see. Is that the Khalifa? That's the leadership? We don't have that. We don't want that, right? So therefore, they need to be able to manage their emotions positively. The Prophet ﷺ was told by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him? We know that the Prophet ﷺ made a mistake about frowning in the face of the blind man. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala corrected him. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is bestowing the mercy and the provision of Allah on the Prophet ﷺ when He told him, by our mercy, you became soft to your companions. And if you were to be harsh, they will run away from you. They will leave you alone. So what does that say? So it says that emotions can make us, if we were to react to the environment that we're in, can you imagine the environment the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba lived compared to what we have? They had a very, compared to what we have, they had a rough environment. The roads are, there is no roads, it's like dirt, and if you were to walk and get your feet dirty, sometimes you get upset. But to them that was the norm, right? And for the Prophet ﷺ to be able to address the believers and the non-believers from their background, they would make him upset. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed His mercy on the Prophet and made him soft. Made him soft for the companions and made him soft for the disbelievers as well. And even He made him soft for the animals. The Prophet ﷺ told about the bird. He heard a bird screaming and yelling. The Prophet ﷺ, who caused that bird to be upset? Whoever took the babies of this bird, bring it back. And I say that He was soft to the disbelievers, but when there's war, there's war. And even with war, He was merciful. He did not cross boundaries. He did not cross the boundaries of what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had put for him and the believers. So therefore, regardless of the environment, how harsh the environment can be, how harsh the people around us can be, we need to be lenient, we need to be soft. That's the example of the Prophet ﷺ. I mean, it's not like we push a button and it happens. It's a struggle by itself, right? But it's a goal. It doesn't mean that we don't achieve it because we cannot fully be like the Prophet ﷺ, but we can be partially like the Prophet ﷺ. Eventually we can be as close as possible to the Prophet ﷺ, but we can start little by little. We can be 1% like him, 5%, 10%, 20%, and you're in that journey to be just like him, right? So therefore, if we were to understand the feelings, and we want to address the feelings and the emotions, we need to look at the types of conflicts that are out there. I mentioned a little bit before about that. I just want to talk more about this here. As I mentioned earlier, the conflicts can be inner, within ourselves, or can be outer. Outer can be from people, or can be from environment. So these are the types of conflicts. Doesn't go out of that, really. So it can be from people, it can be internal to us as a family, as within our circle of friends, or external, the people we don't know, right? So that's also double levels there. So within the family, conflicts with the children, siblings, they have conflicts. Conflict with the parents, the father and the mother, they have conflicts. Children with parents have conflicts. Conflict with neighbors, conflicts with the boss at work, with colleagues at work, people, things outside at work, or strangers in general, as well as, not to mention, also relatives and so forth. So these are the sources or the types of conflicts that could happen, right? So there is no human without emotions, unless they had an accident or they're born that way. But naturally, there's no human without emotions or without feelings. And if we have an emotion or we have a feeling, then that's a signal. Then what does that signal want from us? Just like how I mentioned, like when I bump my head, I just want to rub it. It just needs attention. It needs me to focus on this feeling, this emotion. So therefore, if there is an emotional change inside me, I need to be just knowledgeable about it. I need to acknowledge it. I need to acknowledge the current state, because if the emotion changes, maybe the state around it changes. So I need to be mindful of the state. What is it? What's the state right now? Well, it's a rough situation right now. And then what do I need? So I need to look at what is needed to fix this emotion or to fix this conflict. Like for example, if we say that there's a dispute between two brothers, right? Then they don't feel good about it. So there's a feel of hurt. So addressing that feel of hurt is enough to get our attention to it. So we say, what's the current status? Well, my relationship with the brother is no longer there. It's impacted. That's the current state. The current state in my relation is not the same. It's impacted. So then what do I need? Well, I need to resolve that. I need that brother. I really need him because he's a wonderful brother. I think I like how we connect, how we're close to each other, and I need not to have any problems with anybody. I need to resolve that relationship. I want that relationship to be like it used to be. So what about my goals? Are they impacted? Well, if I don't have this brother with me, my goal as to be going to heaven is going to be impacted, because he's going to be happy. And if I die and he's not happy with me at the day of judgment, he might take all my hasanat, all my pahalas. So therefore my goal is now impacted because of this feeling. So I need to really resolve it. Right? So I need to resolve this relationship to help me whatchamacallit, to help me achieve my goal? And how does this conflict with this brother impacting my relationship with other people? Because that can be the consequence, right? Because there's a belief, because he behaved a certain way, I'm going to make that impression that if anybody behaves the same way, then I'm going to put them all in the same boat. We get this very easily. We call it what? Stereotyping? That's what stereotyping is all about. Because we have an individual experience with one person for the first time, and he hurt us or she hurt us, then everybody who looks like that person, or they have a similar background, or yada yada, we just stereotype all of them and put them in the same boat. So therefore, there's a consequence in my behavior. How is that impacting my goal? It's severely, because I'm judging other people without knowing. Any questions? Any comments?
Assalamualaikum Ustaz.
Alaikum assalam.
I would like to ask about emotions, right? Usually they have this feeling, emotion, because they had that, that emotions in the past triggered by certain situation, issues, and when they don't resolve it, it's still within them, stick with them for years. And when they meet strangers, the strangers might trigger it and they might react defensive, or in a way like, oh, this person, treating me like the same person did that to me. So if the person, basically that person is responsible to fix that conflict, right? In order for that person to move on. But if the person doesn't have the courage to do it, how?
If the person doesn't, what? I'm sorry?
If the person doesn't have the, courage to solve, to face the issues, is it that person's fault, or what's the least that person can do just to move on in his or her life? That's all. Assalamualaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Jazakallah khair for the question. So what I understand from the question is that if there's someone who had a feeling or had an emotion that is old and was not addressed properly, and it's quite some time or somehow or is a negative emotion, and someone might, today, this negative emotion happened when they were younger, and now today that they're adult, they have their own life, that emotion is triggered by someone else. How do we go about addressing that emotion, and how do we resolve that conflict? Again, don't get angry. Don't get angry. And that's a very, very good question. As I mentioned earlier, in the session today, or the talk today, does not apply in these kind of situations. This is an old emotion that is no longer just a feeling. It's a belief that has a consequence. It's that the consequence is embedded, and it's hardwired. That's what I was going to say. Hardwired, and it's a hardcore belief to the person, and it's hardwired within our behavior. So when an external event happens, whether it's conflict or not, it just triggers that conflict, and then we react automatically. That happens in a fraction of a second. It's unconsciously. So that needs to be rewired, and that's what professionals can help you. But the quick answer to that, it can be fixed, and it's nobody's fault. It's nobody's fault. Sometimes parents cause that to children, and now the children are adult, and they're looking behind, back in the days, my father used to do this and that impacted me this. It's not the father's fault, it's not the child's fault. You just need to do something about it. If it's bothering you and it's impacting your life, you need to do something about it. You need to reach out for professionals to help you with that problem. It's not as easy to resolve it. I mean, it can be resolved, but it's not fast. It's not something that you can happen, sit down and talk about it and it's all of a sudden it's gone. It takes time, but it's not taking time without you doing anything about it. Just like you are really gonna learn how to develop a new skill on how to address that old past memory that is triggering that emotion. You're gonna rewire that memory, and rewiring it and making the new connection with the new behavior, that's going to take time. Just like practicing throwing a, how many people play, they threw a basketball? How many people play basketball? Basketball is not famous here. But if you go to the US, children just throw a basketball with just like 3-pointers like no one else. By practice makes perfect. So that's a skill. So it's a skill really how to manage an old emotion, as opposed to having a skill to manage a fresh emotion. So today's talk is addressing how to manage a recent or fresh emotion that is caused by a conflict. Is that, you guys can hear me over? You can hear me over the sound, the noise? Okay. So, so the answer, I guess what I can summarize is like, it's not your fault. It's nobody's fault. Is that something that you can fix for yourself? Something that you can learn how to do and how to manage? And it's something that, that would definitely help you to address other emotions that happened in the past, because it maybe sometimes it's one memory, but it's usually several events that could be impacting us one way or another, and it's just how we go about expressing it, and how do we go about reacting, quote unquote. We're supposed to respond, not react, but we just need to change that behavior from reacting to responding, and that also is a skill that we develop. I hope I answered your question, sister, inshallah. So how do we deal with emotions? So as I mentioned earlier, either we withdraw, we get angry, we get scared. Some people when they get hurt, they get scared. When they get disappointed, they also get scared. The fear is just triggers, anxiety gets triggered. And there's something, or they get rejected, then they be anxious. And if you put another person in the same situation, they get angry. They're responding to it or reacting to it in a different way. Some people, they just say nothing. They don't react because maybe they were told when they were young not to react to a certain behavior. Some people become sad. Some people become violent from anything. That's how they react. So if we express feelings, whether we like it or not, feelings and emotions, we express it. We express it differently. But that's not the healthy way to how to express it. We need to have the healthy way how to express it, just like how the Prophet ﷺ, when the Sahabi pulled the Prophet's clothes and it was rough, and he made a mark on the Prophet's skin and on his neck until it became red. Can you imagine someone do that to you today? You're probably like pushing back, like, what are you doing, man? You're hurting me. But the Prophet didn't do that. He was very lenient. He was very soft. How did he manage all these emotions? Yes, the blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's no doubt about that. That's why the Prophet ﷺ had it really quickly. We can still have the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to have that skill. It just takes us time because it's a skill. So whether we want to develop that skill or not, it's really up to us. That's our choice. But taking it on yourselves and be disappointed or sad or feeling unworthy, that's not healthy. That's one way to express it. That's one way to manage it. There's no doubt about it. You're taking the anger and you're being sad. You're transferring it. But that's not healthy. You're getting angry, you need to address the anger. What's causing the anger? Disappointment? Okay, let's talk about the disappointment. So, so the first thing, so I'm going to really, because I think I have until 12:30, I have like 10 minutes to go, so I need to leave some time for questions if possible. So, so if we, for those who block it, or they say, oh, I don't have any emotions, I don't have to work with emotions, the fact that they blocked it does tell us that there's something there they're aware of that they're blocking. The fact that they're blocking something, the fact that they're saying, oh, I don't have the emotions, I'm just thinking. Well, why are you thinking? It triggered something inside you, must have been something. And that thing is emotion. So we just need to be aware. The first step is becoming aware that there are emotions inside us and they trigger us. And they are maybe most of the, almost 100% of the times they are impacting our behavior. How we behave, how we look at ourselves, and how do we look at people, and how we look at the environment. It's all coming from the inside. So how do we release emotions? So if we have sad emotion, or if we have disappointment, or even disgust, how do we express it? How do we give attention to that emotion? Because we said that if it's pain, we need to pay attention. We rub it, that's the attention, it makes it go away, it makes us feel good. So how do we do that? So addressing the emotions, how do we do that? We communicate. We need to transform that emotion to words. Because these emotions are going to help us make a decision. These emotions almost always help us make a decision. The decision either to shut down, to fight back, to run away, or just do nothing. So these are decisions that we make based on the emotions. So the first thing we need to do is that acknowledge the emotion, and we need to communicate. And this is, something that we use in therapy is called the I statement. See, when we get angry, it was like, you did this to me. That's the first thing we say. You don't do that. That's what we tell our children. Don't do this. And what do? They wait until you look away and they do it again. I told you not to do this. That's not the I statement I'm talking about. I told you, that's not an I statement. That's basically pointing the negative. The child didn't do what you said. So therefore what we need to say is that we need to say, I feel. So we need to start with the feeling, as I mentioned earlier. We start with the feeling. I feel. And you tell the child, for example. If the child did what? What would be an upsetting thing the child would do? Anybody have children here? You have children, relatives. Or your friend. What would be an upsetting thing that would upset anybody? Nobody gets upset here. Wow. I'm talking to the wrong crowd. You guys don't have conflicts. Well, it'd be nice from you, nice of you to sit here and listen about, you don't have conflicts. Okay, conflicts that you saw, or someone had a conflict. What would be something that was upsetting? An example. I'm sorry? Not listening. I didn't hear the sister. Always being late. I love that. The what? Not stubborn. Stubborn and not listening. Oh, I love that. Which one should I use? Which one is more common? I like the one being late. I don't like it either. Stubborn, I don't know. I also don't like it when kids are stubborn. But it triggers something inside us. Like, for example, if somebody is late, you might think like, oh, I'm not important. Why, you're late? You come half an hour late. I'm not that important to you? The other person was more important than me? So that's what you would say, right? If somebody stubborn is like, why are you not listening to me? I'm not good enough for you. Do I have to do this or that for you to listen? Are you that stubborn? Stop being stubborn. Listen, right? That's what we do. I mean, some of us. I don't want to say all of us. So then how do we use the I statement in these two circumstances? So when somebody's late, how do we feel? Sad. Upset. And what's causing us to be upset? I'm sorry? Not being respected. Yeah. Okay, so let's stop there, because we can go deeper also. Let's stop there. So we can say, I feel disrespected when you come to our meeting late. That's to that one. For this one, stubborn. How do we feel when a kid is stubborn? You're telling the kid, don't do, and they're still doing it. Disrespected. Okay? Then you say, I feel disrespected when you're ignoring what I'm telling you. Or when you do what I tell you not to do. You just express that feeling. And you don't say that screaming and yelling, because it's not going to come across clearly. Just like looking at a child and screaming to the child and saying, I love you! The child is going to start crying. Your wife would ask, what did you do to the kid? It's like, oh, I just said I love you. And he's all crying. I just said I love you, and he's going, but how we said it is very important. So when we say it, we need to say it without being angry. You can say it with disappointment. You can say it with being disrespected. You can say it like as if you are not being respected. So I feel disrespected. I feel ignored. I feel unimportant. I feel unworthy. I mean, you can say all these things. They can be the same thing. They can lead to the same thing. When you're coming late to my meeting, or when you're not listening to what I say. Next time, I need you to call me if you're going to be late. So you're giving direction. What do you need? Same thing. Next time, if they're like, for example, you ask them to do something and they're not listening to you, next time I would like you to tell me what's not clear about what I say. You give them direction. So you start with what you feel, and then you tell them what you want. And you can try this. Go home and try it until next week. We're going to meet here, inshallah. Hope you guys make it, if you're not going out of town. But I'll be here, inshallah, covering for Sheikh Hussein. And then we can practice this if you want. And I can continue, inshallah, with the topic. But I'll stop here. You have homework to practice on. And inshallah it works, because I know for a fact, I've seen it work. I mean, I work with people, and they find it very, very powerful. It might sound really simple, but that's also from the Sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ told us, if you have a feeling of somebody hurt you, you need to go and talk to him. That's the etiquette of the Prophet ﷺ when it comes to conflict. So we're just putting a structure around it here. Just say how you feel about what they did, and then tell them, next time I would like you to do, what is it that you want? What is it that you need? You need to put that in there. Because that's what the feeling is there. You're not expressing to people, what is it that you want? Because when you suppress the feeling, you suppress with it your need. And the more feelings you suppress, the more needs you suppress, the more you lose yourself and your goal and what you need to achieve your goal. And it's going to impact your life. So practice it. Share it with the young ones in your family and see how they like it, and then you can come and talk about it next week. If not, you can reach to me. I guess you can send me emails or something. My cards are in the office. Okay, questions or comments? Yes, brother.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
This talking about a conflict between two persons, whether one person feels that it is right, that's why he or she is doing that way, and the other person feels that it's wrong.
Yep.
So you need to have some sort of line drawn, okay, which is straight line, but
Yep.
this is or that. So how do we go about? I mean, if you address them, if you talk to them more often, they will not. They will retaliate. They will
Yep.
not listen to it.
Yep.
Then what we have to get to the counseling, or what sort of how? Do
Okay. So let's take the example of the futsal guy in the hockey rink. Were you there when I gave that example? Yeah. So let's go take that guy. He's all pushed around, and he's isolated, and he kicked out of the game because he was taught that he was doing the same thing that other people did. So if we were to address it earlier when he felt like there's a conflict, nobody's giving me the puck, I'm not included in the game, everybody's pushing me. So he needs, I mean, if that's the situation in your life, you need at that moment, take a moment and pause. Talk about it. It's like, guys, I feel like I'm not part of the team. I need you guys to pass me the puck. That's what I want you to do. And then they need to respond back. They'll respond like, well, we cannot pass you the puck because you don't know how to play. And this is how we play the game. So that opens, by you expressing how you feel, it opens the conversation. So he's coming from a different background. And they're coming from a different background. So each one of them come from an opinion based on their experience. So if you want to fix that conflict, and as I mentioned in one of the talks in the past, step number 1 is that you need to have the willingness to change. Willingness to change doesn't mean that you will change. Why willingness to change? The willingness to change is important because this might be an experience for you that you learn something from it. For example, the futsal player in the hockey rink, he's going to realize, oh, what I assumed how to play hockey is wrong. And he learns how to play hockey correctly. Then he makes a decision. Do I really want to change my way how I play futsal to adapt to hockey, or should I go find futsal team to play with? That's really what conflict is all about. You make a decision. It gives you an awareness to make a decision based on clear facts. Then when you choose to go to play futsal, it's all in good terms. It's like, guys, I thought I could do it, but I can't. Sorry that I disturbed the game. And everybody's in good feeling. Everybody, he can go find himself. But everybody's playing. Everybody's doing their own thing. There's no conflict. The conflict is resolved. Now, if he chooses, he wants to be there, then he needs to adapt. So that one way or another, there has to be a change. So willingness to change need to be there. So if the team said, you know what, we don't want you to leave. We want you to stay. There has to be a change. They need to change how they play. They're going to start playing very close to how futsal players play. But it's no longer hockey. Willingness to change is very, very important in conflict resolution. Because it might not be a change of behavior, but it could be a change of mindset. He can, the futsal player in the hockey rink, he can choose to play hockey rules when he's with the hockey team, and when he's done, he can play futsal. That's his choice.
But what if he's not willing to change?
Yeah.
He still wanted to.
Then the conflict is going to be there.
No
matter who you put to reconcile or to judge, if he's not willing to change, he's going to be there. And that's going to impact him. There'll be consequences in his journey to Jannah. We just need to accept that as a fact. And that's a decision that he or she needs to make. But that comes as a decision from awareness. I've seen people, I'm not going to change. He needs to change. She needs to change. Fix my child. I've heard that a lot. But it's not. It's not always one-way direction of change. But again, here, change is not necessarily a bad thing. When we learn something, you see, when we do math, when we learn how to do math, in a younger age, when we were like 3, I don't know, when we learned math, 4 or 5 years old, we learned math, how to add and subtract. And the more we learn about math, we change how we calculate. So that's a change. So knowledge helps us to change, to improve. So an improvement is maybe a better way to use it than change. But if we see change as a negative thing, then we need to look at what I spoke about, pride versus dignity. If he doesn't want to change or she doesn't want to change because of her pride, then that's something wrong with the person. There's conflicting issues, inner conflicts that are bigger than the outer conflict. Right? So that person needs to be given advice. They need to be heard. we need to acknowledge them, that we're here for you. I'm more than happy to help you. Empathize with them. Empathize is really understanding where they're coming from. Yeah, you come from futsal, it's really not the same. It must be difficult for you to be, yeah, it's difficult, I don't need to change. Everybody else needs to play futsal. I don't want to change to hockey. So we need to acknowledge them and give them a sense of acceptance. That is going to help them open up to change. But telling them, you know what, we try, but you don't want to change, then forget you, then how are they going to change? So for us also to be Khalifa, we need to be empathized with the people. We want them also to be with us in the journey. We want them to come and join us in the journey and be with us. So therefore we want to include them. We don't want to separate them. It's like, it's okay, we're here. How can we help? You just reach out to them. Don't isolate them, or don't give them the sense of isolation. They need to be feeling that they're still included in the team or in the environment. Did I answer your question? It doesn't sound like I did.
Not really, because the thing is, quite often they don't change it, maybe because they started beginning to learn this new behavior from their atmosphere, from their surroundings.
Yeah.
So they tend to move. It's not individual. Talking about two personal conflicts. So they believe what they are doing is right. The other person feels that is not right. So then it will continue. Then maybe not to hurt the person, we probably keep quiet initially, and then as it go along, it become bad to worse. So we can't even address. They don't even talk to each other.
Yeah.
Even brothers also sometimes you don't even talk to each other.
Yeah.
And then you should have some sort of a guideline. Okay, this is a straight line, this is a bad line. So you need to put something straight and see that. Okay, this is
maybe the crooked line for the one person is straight and the other person sees it crooked. Yeah. I understand what you're saying. So let me try give it another try. Let me try give you the answer in a different way. It depends on how old is the conflict. What's causing the conflict? Again, like was mentioned earlier, it could be a very old conflict that they made their own interpretations and they decided that this is not a crooked line, this is a straight line. And therefore, it's okay for me to smoke cigarettes. It's not addictive. It's okay to vape. It's not bad. It tastes good. I never tried it, but people say that it tastes good. It tastes much better than cigarettes. And they justify that this is the right thing. Everybody does it. What are you talking about? Everybody vapes. What are you talking about? It's cool, it has really... That's what they see. So if that is your child, what do? You want to kick him out of the house? Maybe you feel like it because you're so angry. You feel like he crossed boundaries, right? Emotions are up high. If they cannot understand where you're coming from, just open your arms to them. Accept them. Accept them and let them know how you feel. I feel sad when I see you smoke. I need you not to smoke around the house. You can do that. You're addressing an emotion. He knows that it's wrong, but you're still accepting him as a child. Because once you tell him, I don't want you to be around, I don't want to have anything to do with you and your smoking, what's that going to help him? Maybe the reason why he got that, because something inside him that is triggering these emotions, and he is managing that emotion by that bad habit. So if he sees the crooked line as straight, then I highly recommend himself or him and the other person to seek professional help, because there's something in the behavior that he might know that it's wrong. Deep inside him, he might think it's wrong. Maybe it's a part of rebellions. He's going through a phase. He wants to have an identity. I'm a smoker. That's my identity. And that's a change that didn't happen today. it's actually happening. It's supposed to happen when they were like 5, 6 years old, or 11 years old, to have an identity. But they never had that chance. They were told what to say. They were told what to eat. They were told what to dress. They never had that identity. So at the age of 20, 24, 60, 30, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to have my own identity. He never had that chance to build his own identity. So there's something there that he needs help. So staying in the conflict is not going to help anybody. Acknowledging the conflict, acknowledging how you feel. I feel sad, or I feel upset. I feel disgusted when you smoke. So I need you not to smoke around me. Can you do that for me? You know, just expressing that feeling. That resolves the conflict, but you're not changing the other person. You know, you're not asking him to stop smoking. You're just telling him, that's making me, very disgusted. I cannot breathe when you're around me like that. And I really like you as a friend. I want to be around you, for example. Can you do me a favor not to smoke around me? I accept you. I don't like what you're doing. But it's sometimes, subhanAllah, sometimes we accept non-Muslims. But when a child does something wrong, or when a friend does something wrong, and he's still a Muslim, we don't accept them. But because they did something that is, we see it as a straight line, and they see it, and we see it as a crooked line, and they see it as a straight line. But we just reject them altogether. But there are some Muslims who leave Islam, and we still accept them, because they see things the way we see. And same thing for non-Muslims, we accept them regardless of how they are seeing Muslims. Like, oh, it's okay, that's how they see it, that's their choice. But when a child does something that we don't approve, regardless of how good the child is, we see there's so many positive things from the child. They're praying, for example, but they just have a bad habit. We focus on the bad habit and we leave everything positive that they're doing. So I suggest we express how we feel about what they're doing wrong, and just focus on the positive. Does that make sense? It helped a little bit? So I guess the answer is that if the other person doesn't see it, just advise. Give him advice. Maybe you and him, or you and her, or the other person, someone else, that they need to see a professional to see what they're thinking. A third opinion. But that doesn't mean that they will change. And if you're expecting in the conflict to change the other person, good luck. And conflict doesn't mean that you fix the other person. You're not changing the other person. That's not what conflict resolution is about. Conflict resolution is you're changing the conflict, not the person. And that's another talk. Because that's the expectation in conflicts. Like, he needs to change how he does things. No. We just need to acknowledge what's happening, what's causing the conflict, and then you make a decision what you want to do. That decision has a change in it. Whether you want to embrace that change or not, that's your decision. Any other questions or comments? Any questions on the last question or the last answer? Or any thoughts? Yes, sister. It's right there. I'm just conscious about time.
Assalamualaikum, Ustaz.
Walaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
I would like to ask about this scenario that I know of. It's between a son and a mother, and I think the son is trying his best to resolve the conflict with the mother, but the mother, it seems like, keeps blocking her own emotion to express how she feels about the conflict with the son. So and and it has affected the relationship for, I think, almost like 2 years. So so I see that the son has more power to change the situation than the mother, because the son wants to change the conflict. But at this point, the son feels that, you know, that okay, there's nothing I can do anymore. Should he just give up, or should he keep trying, knowing that the result would not be something that what he wants from, you know, from it.
Okay.
So can you give some kind of Islamic advice how he can keep trying to resolve that conflict, because it's involved you know, his relationship with the mother?
Okay, it's really important to understand how is he impacted by that. What's important about him fixing that conflict? I mean, she's his mother. If he's patient with her and accept her what she is and just does what she does, what she wants him to do, he's going to be rewarded for his patience. So I need to understand more. It's really not that easy for me to answer that kind of question. It's very specific to a certain case. So there's a lot more into it than just that, I can imagine. And the same thing for you, and that's why I'm giving you a very general answer. It's not like I know the details, but that's why we need to really spend time and understand what the issue is. And again, I said earlier that there are no human without emotions, unless they were born with a deficiency with that part of the brain that stores and resolves emotions, or they had an accident that impacted that part of the brain that stores emotions. So resolution of that memory also can be a problem with the birth, or an accident, or sometimes side effects of something that happened to the family or the person. So so yeah, I mean, in these kind of questions, when they're very specific, it's really difficult for me to give an answer unless I know the details, and it does take time to understand really the specifics of it. Yeah, because in that case, it's really important to know what's blocking him from changing or seeing the other ways. It's really important, because again, that takes time to find out the deeper issue, because sometimes it's not really the conflict, it's something that is happening from experience and all that. And that's why I mentioned earlier, sometimes the parents get upset at a child for not getting A's in the school, but they're not praying, or they left Islam or something, but hey, he's an A student, but he's not praying. So they beat him up for not getting A's, but they didn't do anything about the child not praying. So these are the kind of things it's really important. But that reaction to the emotion of the father is really impacting the child as they grow, and it's not a clear answer in many situations unless we know the specifics of the case. So inshallah we will continue our talk next week. Can we stop here? Okay. Subhanakallah bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilaik. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.